Hey, long time no see. It's Sparrow. So, I recently finished with my school's summer holiday, and I was so busy. I was always working or going to lives or working on homework. So, I really didn't have much energy or time to record a video, so I actually have a whole lot of lives to talk about. I don't know if I'll get to all of them in one video. It depends on like how many things pop into my brain when I'm talking about each one. It might get broken up. Or a couple of them were electronic tickets only, and so I might just straight up forget to talk about them, so this might get broken up into multiple videos, but we shall see. But just, I can say up front, they were all amazing. Like, solid bangers all month, basically. So, yeah, let's just dive right in. So the first one that I didn't, because I believe the last one I talked about in a video was when I went and saw Machina for the first time. And so I guess like the week after, I went to, let's see, so Machina was the 25th. Okay, so the next one, actually, it was an e-ticket. So I knew that didn't look right. So the first one, it was Loa. I don't know if I've talked about Loa on this channel in the past, but if you like drums and you don't know Loa, you absolutely should. So who is he? So Loa, of course, as you can infer, not a band. He's actually a support drummer. So like there is another foreign fan who is like, she is known as like the Loa fan. She follows him. Any band that he works with, she's there. Which absolutely commend. But my experience with Loa, I'm not sure. I haven't really been able to find details about when he started being a support drummer, but when I first saw him was when the like really minor band Doku lost their drummer in late in 2019, mid to late 2019. And so he came on as the support drummer, and very quickly my eye was drawn to him because he's just a fantastic drummer. And I suppose if you're going to be a support drummer, you really have to be, because like he works with a bunch of different bands and he has to get reasonably good at a lot of different band songs in a lot of different styles. And sometimes like he told a story at his birthday live about, I think it was Jigsaw. He was asked to be their support drummer with like a week lead in time for like a 2 or 3 man live where he would have to learn like 14 songs in a week. So, I mean, you see support musicians all the time, you know, in similar situations where like the original member leaves the band and they just have to bring people in on a recurring basis, or situations where like, oh, the bassist is sick, so we bring in a support bassist. But I never really gave it much thought until like now. I really have a lot of respect for support musicians. But for his birthday this year, he decided he was going to do his first solo live. And of course, before I already talked about Hibiki's solo live. And unfortunately, that one, no, like, nothing to do with him or the audience or anything. I was just so exhausted from school. Like, I really wish I had the energy to really appreciate and enjoy what I was witnessing. But fortunately, Loa's drum solo live was the first weekend after my summer break started. So I was very rested. I was really able to enjoy it. And he wanted to hold it in Yokosuka, because that's where he's from, in this live house called Pumpkin. And to say that, like, this sort of small town, small city live house in Kanagawa is really different from in Tokyo is an understatement. Because, like, in Tokyo, you basically can't find any that allow smoking outside of, like, designated spots outside of the venue, or like in a separate room. But no, this place, it was just like, okay, stage is here, bar is here, feel free to smoke at the bar. And it was just, that was a little bit stressful for me because I have a mild allergy to tobacco, and so I really was not expecting that, because, like, it just doesn't happen in Tokyo. But regardless, I soldiered on, and I bought an S ticket, because of course I did. The S tickets came with a special towel, and you could watch him get the drum kit set up and watch his rehearsal. And we got a certain number of 2 shots. And we could do a 2-shot with him after the rehearsal, and one after the live itself when he was, like, all made up. So, yeah, he's a really chill guy, and it was so good just getting to hear. It's the only band I've ever, and okay, that's not true. So, of course, he didn't do any doku songs because they're long broken up, and it seemed like he was really trying to focus the set list on bands that are currently active. So if you, like, really liked certain songs from different bands, and he did give a set list printout to everybody. So if you really liked, say, Vagu Project or Z Clear or, King, then it was encouraged, you should actually go and see those live. So I thought it was a really good way to make the set list and also promote the bands that he works with. Most of the time when I see him, it's either for Tsukishigure, or it is Jigsaw. But most of the time, I'd say the vast majority of the time, it's Tsukishigure. And so those are really the only songs that I knew going in. And initially we were all sitting, and there were 5 of us who bought S tickets. Maybe 6? No, definitely 5. And one of them was his mom, and she was so sweet. Like, she was sitting next to me, and there was a point, because the layout is really strange at Pumpkin. So the door to go to the restroom is on the back of the stage. And so you have to, like, walk around to the bar, and it's got the passage-ish or walkway to get to the bar already has a bit of a low ceiling if you're on the taller side. And, like, I could clear that, no problem. But when you make the right to actually go around to the back of the stage area to go to the restroom, it's even shorter. And so if you're not paying attention, which I wasn't, just clocked my head. But so like everyone, like if you go during the middle of the set, like everyone can see you. But on the other side, like, and Loa actually brought this up too, like when you're coming out of the bathroom, you actually can see him from behind while he's playing, which is like, I've never seen that before. It's really, really unique. Not sure if it's a good unique, but unique nonetheless. So, you know, we were all there for the rehearsal and everything, and he already explained about the restroom, and then he explained again at the beginning of the actual live, and his mom had decided to sit in the second row, like during the actual set, because she just found that sitting in the front row was just too loud. But he's explaining, and then he's about to get started, and then his mom like kind of loudly interrupts, and she was like, "What about the bathroom?" It's like, how do I get to the bathroom? It's like, he's like, "You have to walk around." But he's like, "But I mean, if you want to, you can just cross the stage." And I was just like, "Oh, that is really adorable." And of course, you know, it seems like his mom usually doesn't get the chance to see him perform. So I think it was probably really special for like both of them. And other people that had done the S tickets have done like the barbecues and other things, that other little events that he holds. So I would say of the five of us, it was my first time getting to meet her. And I can see why everybody's face just kind of lit up when she showed up. So yeah, that was. And of course, as usual, Loa's just great. And it was really cool getting to watch him set everything up. And there was one song that had like a spoken word introduction, and so he decided that he was going to do it himself. And because, you know, the drummer usually does the computer to play like any incidental instruments or, you know, backings, so he couldn't really do the spoken intro, get started, and hit the button. Like, it was not enough hands, you know. So he like brought over his roadie, and he's like really emphasizing how important this is, that the roadie gets the timing exactly right. And, you know, he gives this really dramatic spoken word introduction to this song. And then he finishes, and the roadie takes like, God, I don't know, like 3 or 4 seconds to get it. And then Loa makes this like really over dramatic, like, "Oh my God, are you stupid? Like, how could you mess this up? Do it again." And so he does the whole thing again, and he gets, like, he doesn't even get to finish, and he pushes the play, and, you know, he stops again, and he like kind of like goes off on him a little bit. Like, I'm certain, like, it felt very dramatized, especially because the third time it was like, so it went from like waited too long, like didn't do it long enough, and then the third time he got like 3 words in, and then like hit the play button, and he just like went in and started, and it was just like, that was it was so weirdly funny. And yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time. I would actually really love to see some of the other bands that he does support for, which is of course a perfect segue into the next one, because the next one, I think the Thursday after I went to that one, it was Souma's birthday live. So Souma was the singer for, I followed him in Yakouchu, and before that he was in a band called M.E.S.S, and I guess before that he was in a band called Iggy, but I'm not so familiar with them. But like, I absolutely loved him in Yakouchu, and I believe, I'm not sure if I posted the video where I talked about going to see Yakouchu with the new vocalist, but when Souma announced that he was going to do a live for his birthday, basically a whole bunch of session bands, I, of course, wanted to go. And like, God, they're all session bands, so they're all called like random things, but so I couldn't very easily just like break down who everybody was. But I remember when I got there, I noticed there was a woman standing kind of near the venue that was wearing a Gosan shirt with a Gosan towel. I was like, that's kind of random. And I started looking up, like, are there any Gosan lives happening nearby? And there weren't. I was like, okay, it's a little bit strange. And then as people started to filter in, and because, you know, it's a bunch of session bands with some pretty big names, you know, you're getting a pretty good variety of t-shirts and other goods that on like the people that are there. But as a former like die-hard Gosan fan, my eyes just like very naturally drawn to those designs. And so I started to notice a rather interesting pattern that I was seeing a lot of people wearing Mizutamari wristbands. I was like, again, that's really, really strange. And so I was like, well, I'm certain I would remember if he announced. So like I went on Twitter and I'm looking, and no, he didn't say anything on Twitter about performing. And I look on Souma's page where he like gave the list of everyone that was going to be in all the session bands, and I didn't see anybody from Gosan. So I was like, I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. But like on the way down, there was another list posted that was kind of updated, because there had been a few spots on the online display that had like question marks. So it was like, I don't know if they were supposed to be secret or if they hadn't been decided yet, but they had an updated list that was posted on the wall in the stairwell on the way down. This was at Edge. And I made a point of looking at that, and no, it was still nobody from Gosan. And then sure enough, the opening band had Souma doing vocals, and Mizutamari and Kawamura Tomoyuki? Yeah, I think Tomoyuki is his name. I will be so embarrassed if I got that wrong. Anyway, Kawamura, I do remember, it's Kawamura, were both playing guitar, and Souma was on vocals. And I guess, I imagine that it was probably announced very late on like Mari's social media or something like that, maybe on Instagram stories, because it wasn't on Twitter, but definitely as enough people knew that they were able to come wearing their Mari goods. But he did make a note during the MC that it was announced after the show was already sold out. So what I didn't know was apparently Mari and Souma are actually really, really good friends. So, and then Kawamura and Souma actually have the same birthday. And I had seen that on Twitter a couple of days earlier on their birthday. They both made posts. And so that was kind of cool too. And then they played a very old Gosan song. And it's been probably a good 8 months or so since I've been to a Gosan live. I think the last one that I went to, was probably Mari's birthday live, which was a little bit before New Year's, maybe the day before New Year's. And so it's, but when you have gone to as many Gosan lives as I have, at least some songs, especially the older ones, I guess it's like riding a bike, because like I didn't have a whole lot of people to follow to do the foodie, and I still remembered reasonably well how to do everything, and just like my body remembered. And it was just really fun to hear a song that I know so well but performed by a singer like Souma that I like. And I wasn't really familiar with the singer, or like the musicians in the next couple of session bands, but the last one, which was also Souma, had Loa doing the drums. And that was where I learned something kind of interesting about myself, because like I really like Souma, I really like Loa, and in the past, if I was given the choice to go see, say, Tsukishigure and Gatocho on the same day, every time I would have gone to see Gatocho. It's like I loved the band, I loved the music, and you know, Souma and Hirotaka are both like oshis of mine. And so I was just like, oh, you know, I've always seen it said that when it comes to like your oshis or your honmei, whatever, where you really get to see the test is when you have two bands that you like performing on the same day. Who do you go to see? Who do you choose? And so knowing that, I would have probably said Souma was my top, because of the between those, because I would always choose Gatocho, and in Gatocho I had both Hirotaka and Souma, but Souma was my favorite of the two. And so it was really surprising that when Souma and Loa were performing on the stage together, I couldn't not look at Loa. And so what I learned about myself is that in my internal Oshi ranking, Loa is actually above Souma. But the bands that I know him in, or I have known him in, wouldn't beat out Gatocho with Souma. So, I don't know. Just bangya things. But anyway, yeah, so that was really cool getting to see. So in that set, I think there were Iggy and Ashme's and Gatocho songs, but the Gatocho songs were the only ones that I knew. And it's really interesting to, even with the same vocalist, to see the same song played by essentially a different band, and with all these different musicians doing these songs that I was so like intimately familiar with, and they sounded so different just because they were being played by different guys. And it's a trippy feeling. Highly recommend. And then I think, oh, forgot to, I do have Cheki. So my Loa Cheki, from his birthday, he took at his house beforehand. And yeah, I'm in love with Loa Melon. And those ones were the ones that I took with him before, or like after the rehearsal and after the performance. And then I have a random Yureiz. Hi, Sheena. So that's that one. And then I also got myself a Loa from Souma's birthday. And don't want to drop anything, but there are my Souma from his birthday. And then, of course, also we have a Shugore here, which means, oh, right, because it goes that way. So that's what's going on. Got to organize my thoughts. So I think that's about all I have to say about that one. And then, yeah, after that there was a festival, but that one, I don't really remember too much about that one. I went to 2 different days for the Saitama Summer Rock Festival, and the first one, I only really was there to see Chaos, and it was, fortunately, like it started early, and going to see one of the smaller bands at a festival like that, it was pretty easy to get a spot on the Saizen. And yeah, that one, they did a pretty good show, but one of the things that I didn't really like about that venue was I don't think they had re-entry, and it was a really, really long festival. Like, doors opened at noon, and I want to say it probably went until like 9 or something. There was no food. And so, and maybe I'm wrong about re-entry, but they kind of made a big deal when my friend and I started to leave early because we were hungry. And so we kind of had to pace ourselves on that one. So apart from Chaos, there really wasn't anybody that I really have a lot to say about. But then the next one, so the next one actually was originally billed as 5 bands, but became 4 because one of the 5 was Fukuro. And as a lot of you probably know, Fukuro had Yoshiatsu, who, yeah, so Fukuro is still on my ticket. But of course they did not perform. So this was actually a really interesting live because there was not any band I would say could be described as like loud K, which is a really, really common and popular genre right now. I'd say like loud K and menhera and bands that are actually just both are overwhelming numbers. So when I go to Taiban, that's usually, I would say probably like 70% of the bands that I see are all loud K or menhera, and I would say like none of these bands were. So the first band that played was of course Oideyo Yureiz, and this was at Edge, and I really love Edge as a venue because it's really wide. So it may not be like super long, but it is wide. So people tend to be pretty chill because there's so many places to get a very, very good view that I feel like people are less territorial, for lack of a better word, at Edge, unless it's one man or very, very, very big bands, which I don't think any of these were. Like Dolly is probably the biggest name that was performing, but they were retired for they were disbanded for such a long time, and they've only recently come back. So even though they are like a decently big name, they're not the same kind of draw that would really cause that much territoriality at a venue like Edge. So when I got there, and I didn't buy the Yureiz t-shirt because I just didn't love the design. So I kind of came just decked out in all my Dolly stuff, and I didn't really know going into it who I was going to name at the door, because I figured Oideyo Yureiz makes sense because they're a very new band, so they probably have fewer people that are going to list them, and they were like directly listed on the ticket as the opening act, so those are usually the smallest. And so I was like, well, they're probably gonna benefit the most from me saying that that's who I came to see. But also, again, Dolly is just sort of getting their stride again after like 10 years, I think, not doing much of any activities. So I could also see the benefit in saying Dolly, but in the end I did decide to go with Yureiz. But of course, I think it was probably pretty funny walking in saying that's the band I'm there to see while wearing like my Dolly shirt with my Dolly towel and all that good stuff. But like, I got my spot. I was on the third row in the center, and someone in the second row turned around to ask me who I was there to see, and she saw my shirt and she was like, "Oh, Dolly." And I was like, "Oh yeah, but I'm also here to see Yureiz as well." And she was like, "Oh, well, I'm here to see what was the group? Yakouchu something. That's an insect kanji, and I can't remember the reading for it. Like maybe Yakouchu, something like that. So she was there to see that group, and they were playing second. So she was like, "Well, do you want to trade?" And of course. So I got to be in the second row for Yureiz, and then we switched back, and then I think after like Umiyuri, a couple of people just like filed out, and so I got to be on the second row again for Dolly. So that was really, really good. And then all of the bands were fantastic. So Oideyo Yureiz, they're an Art K band. And then I'm pretty sure it's like Yakouchu. While I was listening to them, I was like, oh, these guys, they are giving me Art K vibes. I did look them up after, and they were listed as being Art K. And the guitarist actually was playing a very unique looking electric guitar that was somewhat reminiscent of an acoustic guitar, but not like, the proper wide one. But when I was in college, I spent maybe a year and a half at a school in a dorm with a lot of music majors, and that school had a really good like jazz program and also like classical guitar. So I did get to, I did make friends with some people who did classical guitar, and I got to hear them play. And the way that this guy was playing reminded me of those friends playing classical guitar. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I was like, this feels like art K. This doesn't feel like your typical visual K. And so, yeah, they were really good. I recommend them a lot. And then Umiyuri, they were also very interesting. And I looked them up, and I want to say they were listed as being Tanbi K, which I thought was pretty interesting as well, because you don't really see that many like modern Tanbi K bands. And I could be wrong on this, but to me, I tend to associate Tanbi K with more like 90s and early 2000s. But no, they were a pretty recent Tanbi K band. And then Dolly, of course, always have reminders right back here of how much I love Dolly, and so they were absolutely incredible, and I loved every second. But let us move on. The next one, it was another one that had a pretty long set, and was another Oideyo Yureiz. And yeah, I remember going into this one with a fair amount of excitement over multiple bands that were playing. So Oideyo Yureiz, Machina, a Jigsaw, and Tsukishigure. I was a little bit disappointed though when I found out that Loa was not performing with Jigsaw or Tsukishigure. So, wah wah. And it was a pretty long, like every set was 35 minutes, which is a little bit longer than your standard. And there were 7 bands playing. 7 bands, even with normal 20-minute sets, is a little bit more than I have in my tank. So by the time Machina maybe was done, I was like, I can't really do more. And Tsukishigure was close to the end, and I decided just to get some dinner and go home, because I was like, Loa wasn't there. So, and I'd already seen like 3 of my 4 bands that I wanted to see. I think Oideyo Yureiz was maybe the first band to play. And I forgot to say in the previous one, but Oideyo Yureiz has been in a little bit of a transition, I would say, because when they were Akai Yurei, I associate them very strongly with like very upbeat, fun Furitsuke. And I feel like since they made the transition from being Akai Yurei to Oideyo Yureiz, they have really embraced one of the elements of Art K is that it typically de-emphasizes Furitsuke, and they tend not to spend as much energy building songs around Furitsuke. Because if you have attended enough lives, you do start to pick up on those specific sound cues that get reused by every band, because it's like, oh, that's a headbanging sound cue, that's an ori tatami sound cue, etc., etc. So if you're familiar enough with it, you can go to a new band you've never seen before and have a reasonable idea of what to do. But an Art K band will typically not focus as much on building their songs around Furitsuke. And so a lot of the lives I've seen them recently, at least half of their set will be songs that have either minimal or no footy. And they don't go in high energy and then back off and then end higher energy like you would maybe expect for other bands. Like, they have been starting with no footy, and then at the middle or the end, they will just suddenly ramp up the energy. And I think it's quite an interesting way of building the set, and I do like it a lot. And also, it's like they have been playing with bigger names than when I first started seeing them. They were playing with in Taiban, where maybe the biggest band there would pull like 20 to 30 people, and most of the bands were pulling like 7. So they grew quite big quite fast in those like small ponds, and they have been doing a lot of shows opening for bigger Taiban. And so they have been at the beginning of most of the shows that I've seen them recently. But I do feel like structuring that way, more in like the middle of a Taiban, having all of those songs with no furitsuke, I do think, at least for someone like me, I would probably appreciate the reprieve and the chance to like rest and just enjoy. So that was Oideyo Yureiz. And next was Melltaku. And don't remember too much about them. I did like them though. M.E.S.S, I remember they had this really fun foodie with voodoo dolls. And I'm a sucker for some good foodie, especially if you have a unique prop. So I definitely remembered that. And then it was maybe Jigsaw. I think it was Jigsaw after that. And I hadn't seen Jigsaw in a while because they were the ones that I really wanted to see them with my friend, but that was the live when I got knocked into a wall and had to go home early because I wasn't feeling well after that. So this was my first time seeing them in like a year, but I thought they were really good. So I'm always excited when I see them on one of my tickets. I usually don't go out of my way, but every time I have seen them, I do really like them. I was very excited to see Machina again, especially knowing the songs more this time. And I'm trying to remember, this was they were doing the white out costumes at this live, and the whiteout costumes, everyone is saying, are very princely. But I don't know, they give me tacky dictator vibes. I mean, I don't hate them, but I do find them to be quite funny costumes in a I don't think this is intentional sort of way. But they did some really fun songs. I think at least at the moment, I think my favorite one is Rabbit Hole. The foodie is really fun for that one. I think that's the one that has like the bunny ears and like bunny ear mosh. And yeah, I can definitely see myself getting into Machina. And I did actually get to see them the next day because they were also playing at my second day of the Saitama Summer Rock Festival. And there were more bands that I explicitly wanted to see on this day, so I didn't give myself as many rest sets, we'll say. And yeah, so I think Machina might have been like the second band to play, like second or third. And of course they were so fun, and they were wearing like the black costumes, and not gonna lie, I think the black costume is way better than the white costume. The white costume has a lot going on, but because they were probably one of the smaller bands that was playing, and theirs was so early, I want to say they probably started around 1. There wasn't as many people, but they did have a really good, really active Saizen for the rest of us to follow. And so yeah, they had a really good set. And then I did redeem my, like, they have a special thing for newcomers that if it's you can get basically 1 free 2-shot with a member of your choosing. And I kind of figured out that I like Uni from Sarah's Birthday Live just because I think that he's really funny. And so I decided that I wanted to get my photo with him. And, you know, I was expecting, because this is like a free thing, I'm expecting we go in, you know, Otsukaresama, raibu tanoshikatta, take the photo, see ya. You know, I'm not expecting anything like big or elaborate. But yeah, no, I was really impressed. Like, he was so enthusiastic to like have a conversation. And I know a lot of bandmen can get kind of jealous about, you know, they always want to be your favorite, right? So I thought it was actually very interesting, probably because I was doing the free newcomer, was probably part of the reason why he asked in the first place. But he asked me, oh, who are you here to see? And so I was like, oh, I'm here to see Chaos. And he's like, oh, that's so cool. Who's your favorite in Chaos? And so I told him, oh, Guy. And he's like, oh, you like drums? Like, yeah, usually I like drummers, but you know, you're really cool, so I wanted to get my picture with you. And like, I was wearing a yukata that day, and I was actually wearing my Iroka Mazari collaboration yukata, which came in a couple weeks before. And you would think I would debut it at the Mazari gig, but Guy's color is green, and I bought the green one, and I really don't have a lot of green clothes. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna wear a yukata, and I think this is the perfect opportunity to wear this. And so I had fun with my obi, and so Uni was like really, really complimentary about my yukata, and that was just really sweet. So we had like a actually nice, genuine conversation, and I was having a talk with somebody online who's a big fan of Uni and is nervous about meeting him for the first time and maybe not being able to communicate. And my impression of him and his personality is that I really think that it's like I can communicate okay, but I think that he seems like the kind of person that even if you don't speak much or any Japanese, like he's still going to be enthusiastic, and he's still going to be excited to meet you and try to communicate as best as he can. So I think if you are also a fan of Uni and are on the fence about, like, go for it, because he just seems like a really sweet, really genuine guy. So that was my experience with Machina. And then I also really wanted to see the band Romio because I saw them, want to say in 2019, at a Taiban with Doku. I was actually at Takadano Baba area, and I didn't actually get into Romeo, but I liked them enough at the time that I bought their towel, which is why, like, when I saw their name, I was like, oh, I want to see them again. I want to see, it's like, I didn't even remember what style of music that they played. And let me tell you what, the singer had a lot of charisma. Like, this is maybe a little bit of a weird comparison, but the singer for Romeo reminded me a lot of Adore Delano. If there's any crossover here between fans of RuPaul's Drag Race and Visual K, like he really reminded me of Adore Delano when singing. So yeah, I mean, again, I do think, you know, there are sometimes bands where you're like, oh, that was fun. I will definitely enjoy seeing this band again if I happen to be at one with them in the future, but maybe not wanting to go out of your way. So I think that's kind of where Romeo sits with me, is if they were doing another Taiban with bands that I like will consistently go to, I would happily watch them again. But I just don't think that they're one that gets me like wanting to spend ticket money just to see them. And yeah, Kaos, I was a little sad for Kaos because the week before, was it the week before? 2 weeks before? It was a week before. There was a full Saizen for them, but the second week, it was, I don't know, maybe half to 3/4 full. And so it was like, oh, it's a little sad. And then I had the same spot that I did the time before, except the week before, I had a perfect view of Guy, but I guess the symbols were a little bit different, and so from the same spot, I could not see him at all. There was a symbol right covering his face, and so that was a little bit disappointing. But my other favorite in Kaos is Ikura, the vocalist. So since I couldn't watch Guy, I got to enjoy more Ikura, and that's nice. So some other, like another highlight was I did get to see the band King, and I don't remember too many details, but I did think they were cool. So, and King is one that sometimes Loa does support for as well, but alas, he was not this day. So I did have 2 more that I went to see. Yesterday and the day before, I saw Mazari's band set tour final, and yesterday I went and saw Kaos for the first day of their 2nd anniversary one-man tour. But we are officially past 50 minutes, and I don't want to go over an hour. I just don't. And yeah, I'm gonna be real honest here. I have too much to say about Mazari and the Kaos Live, so those are definitely going to be in a separate video. And appreciate your patience with me if you got this far, especially considering I had so many bands and so many lives that I've seen since the last time I was able to make a video, that unfortunately, yeah, there just are a lot of details that are lost in the deep recesses of my brain. But I hope that regardless, I hope you enjoyed my ramblings and my recollections of those lives, and hopefully I'll get another video recorded soon talking about the Mazari and the Kaos lives. And yeah, so thank you so much for going on that ride with me, and have a good night.